Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything else in between. Welcome to another podcast. And today, I'm joined by my lovely host, Kyle.
Hi, everybody.
We're going to be talking about a spicy subject, or at least it could be seen as spicy by some. The good topic of how you should model your heresy models, because there's a lot of debate about this, Kyle. There's a lot. The internet's wild with debate.
It's interesting because you always get these weird questions, but I think that they're a little bit weird because people are sort of wanting approval before they go out and do things.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't understand what we're talking about, basically, in the Horus Heresy community, we kind of have a number of different types of players. We have the players who just don't care what their models look like or how they're armoured. And then when I say armoured, I'm talking about the specific armour mark that model is using. Bear in mind, there's no rules to dictate that. A tactical marine is a tactical marine.
The only armour stipulations, I think, is your Terminator armour.
Yeah, well, then each Terminator variant has different rules. So... And then on the very end of the opposite spectrum of this, we have our Puritans, the guys and ladies who believe that you should have your army like the law and the pictures and at certain times during the heresy. So, like the beginning of the heresy, they would view that everyone should be really wearing like maybe Mark III, Mark IV, a splash of Mark II. And then by the end of the heresy, maybe a little bit of a dabble of splash of Mark 6 or mostly Mark 5. And then you get the others that will literally just flat out refuse some marks of armour being even remotely looked at or touched, such as Mark 7. But we will go into why a lot of these people are a bit weird and wrong in their assumption.
I don't think necessarily wrong, Rick. I think that some people do. Some people definitely have a hang up about what armor marks that they do, and some people like that. They like to put that sort of stipulation in. It's like, oh, I only want to use like Mark IV,
yes,
Mark III.
Yes, but
I
understand the they want to do that. It's when they try to force that opinion on others. And this is being commented about by Games Workshop social media influencers, and we'll touch on to that when we talk about the Age of Darkness box being launched and how Games Workshop went about that and some of the responses to that box, because that kind of ties into this topic quite a lot, because it's still being talked about a year later.
Yeah. It's a point of contention among some of the community.
Yeah.
Let's put it like that.
So for me personally, I would say I've been a strong narrative player who likes the aesthetics of the heresy. I wouldn't class myself as a Puritan. I personally would try to have an army that fits into the Horus Heresy aesthetically over 40k, and would try to make sure that my units are built and painted to fit the legion I'm playing and the narrative that comes with that.
But it's like it's from that is like it is very much an individual's opinion, as you said.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
Nobody is ever going to be able to agree on this topic, and we're just sort of sharing our insights, right?
Yes, and mocking people at the same time.
I mean, people are either going to love or hate what we're talking about. They're either going to agree or disagree.
But that's the beauty of podcasts like this. We'll talk about these subjects.
It is entirely based on our own perspectives and opinions, right?
But I've seen your wolf army.
Yeah.
You're very much down with the wolf.
Yeah. I mean, my army is probably a very good example of like a Horus, like a more purist horse. And not entirely, because there are some things that you just can't get for love nor money, and
True.
sometimes you just have to make do. And whenever it came to like building my units, I was very happy to just keep on using like 40k parts and like the chain swords and bolt pistols from the 40k Space Wolf range. Was like adapting them and joining them together with like the older Mark IIIs, Mark IVs, and stuff. I've never had an issue with like that mix and matching of armor.
Yeah.
I've never seen that like, oh, this unit has to be like all Mark III. This has to be all Mark IV, whatever else like that. It's like, no, it's like for me, it's always been is like this is you have to think armor is equipment, and
Yeah.
whenever equipment breaks down, it'll be replaced with whatever you have on hand, and
Very much
whatever
so.
that may be, you just make do. So that's the way that I've constructed that theme around, because I enjoy I really enjoy building towards a theme, and my theme's
Yeah.
always been one of the specific great companies, and I went for that theme in what units that I've constructed, and beyond a few like parts that I've constructed models with, which I have just gone, oh, this is cool, this will work. And you know, it's just nobody else is going to notice it because it's just my project, right? They're going to see it on the table. They're going to say, "Oh, it looks fantastic. It looks really cool," and then that'll be it.
Yeah.
But it's me who lives with the army. It's me who plays with the army. It's me who's satisfied whenever it's on the table. And I love taking pictures of the games that I play.
But I think when this topic comes up, like instantly, I sort of imagine, and it kind of does pop into my head. We are historical wargamers. Essentially,
Yeah,
that's exactly what we
yeah.
are.
Yeah, we're science fiction historical wargamers, which is a weird combination if you think about it.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
but I mean, some people love that. Some people aren't as invested into that. Some people really like the game. But you always get these questions of like, oh, I've got this, I can recall you saying this a couple of weeks back, Rick, where it's like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this. It's like doing a late Heresy, Siege of Terra based like World Eater force using like the new World Eaters. And you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I
But
mean,
I think
I would always.
aesthetically, yeah. I mean, I remember back in first edition, I wanted to run 2 squadrons of Predators,
Yeah,
and I bought 6 40k plastic Predators. I bought 4 normal ones, and then I bought 2 Bal Predators because I wanted the assault cannons.
yeah.
Um, and I remember posting this into one of the Heresy Facebook groups, and I was instantly hit with, they're not Horus Heresy tanks. And I was like, oh my god. Like, really? It's a Predator. It has the same guns. Yeah, but the
It
Horus
comes down to that
Heresy,
whole.
the Heresy tanks came from such and such a forge pattern, and they look like this. And I was like, amazeballs. Amazing.
Now, there's some things from the historical wargaming point of view that I agree with. It's like in in second edition, as the example, Predators, as you've mentioned,
Yes.
can now all take turrets, twin link glass cannons. Now that was always a thing from 40k.
Yeah, it was, yes.
In the lore and the things that they've said about it is like that didn't come into being until the Scouring.
Yeah, but in regards to things like that, Heresy doesn't have that as a weapon option for a Predator.
They do now.
Well, if they do now, then that's fine. Then they brought it in. But
It's
but
put in.
back in then they
Like,
didn't. But
some purists, and I think that I would be whenever it comes to that, is I'll never run last cannon Predators because they don't fit in with the theme, they don't fit in with the history of what I'm going for and what I want to represent.
Well,
Right?
that's fair. But at the end of
And
the day, if Games Workshop have given us the options on that unit entry to allow us to do it, then
Yeah.
there shouldn't really be any issue.
But
I will laugh at one thing. I'm not going to name the guy who has said this because I don't really want to get him into trouble from his customers. But I remember speaking to a very good games designer who makes some really awesome games, and we were discussing sort of the design approach, and like I used to design my own game and be a part of a gaming company, and he called historical wargamers rivet counters, and I was like laughed and was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, we've had to change our shields 4 times because they didn't have the correct amount of rivets on the outside because people complained." And I was like,
is that from actual historical wargamers?
yes.
Okay.
Like, but this isn't a game that is a proper historical game. It's not like Napoleonics or anything. This was a game that was very much rooted in history, but wasn't a true historical war game. It was more like a war game that we would play, like 40k, Age of Sigmar, Horus Heresy, but with the historical element being a very big how the game was focused. And people
Yeah.
were literally going, "Those shields don't have enough rivets." And it's like it's and I when I've had this conversation with like heresy people, players as well, I get now where my friends come from and why he calls them rivet counters, because I believe that that's what the Puritans are. They are literal rivet counters. Like if you're not using a certain mark of armor and trying to push that being a certain period of the heresy, that they instantly dislike it, and it's very
I mean,
it's very interesting viewpoint that they have.
getting hit for predators, as you mentioned, I don't understand, because predator's a predator. Just because it's not a Deimos predator does not make
That
it
is
any less a predator.
exactly the reason why I got hit. And it
I
was
mean,
like,
we mentioned in the first episode about the Land Raider Phobos, that is the 40k pattern
which is
Land Raider
the
we
exact,
all know and love,
it's the same one as
which
the
is
Proteus.
exactly the same as the Proteus, but they decided to just go, nah, this can't be a dedicated transport, but no, it's like the local community does not care about that, right?
Yeah,
A
yeah.
Land Raider's a Land Raider's a Land Raider.
Yeah, it's like I remember the discussion about like the whole thing kicked off because somebody wanted to use Mark 7 tactical marines in their Horus Heresy army, and
Yeah,
this was years before we come anywhere near the Siege of Terror. And like this debate raged and raged about if the person should be able to do it or if it's just a 40k play, a player coming into the Horus Heresy with their 40k army. And it's like, but dudes, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. Let the
yeah,
person do what they want to do. It's their army.
yeah. No, I think that, as I briefly mentioned, I think that some armies work really well with those 40k kits.
Yes.
Some don't.
Yes.
But that's my personal aesthetics
Yeah.
talking more than anything else. If somebody were to rock up to a game of Heresy and they had a 40k army, it's like they could be starting. It's not my place to question them, right?
No, but
It's
yeah,
um,
exactly.
my,
I mean, it's their
my sole
collection,
reason
their
for being-
models.
yeah, my sole
Um,
reason for being there is to enjoy a game.
Yeah, but I have the when the Age of Darkness box was announced, there was a lot of this around Mark 6, and as you pointed out, there still is. Um,
I
but
mean, I'm completely confused by the arguments and the complaining that has gone on for the past year over the Mark Six.
I like trading
Um,
them.
there's some people that have really, really fought against them and said, "Oh, I don't like Mark Six. It was never in the fluff until like into the heresy."
Oh, I love people like that because you know what I do? I go and find pictures, or I go to my shelf and I pull off my first edition Space Marine book, right?
Yeah,
Which was epic first edition, which was basically the Horus Heresy, and then I flick through it and find a picture of the Sons of Horus fighting the Ultramarines, and I take a photo and I show it to them and going, "Hey, dude, they're all wearing Mark 6 power armor."
There's one of the most iconic pieces of Space Wolf artwork, with them, with like Russ with all the guys around him and on Prospero. I mean, there's Mark 6 guys in that picture, and that was brought out a long time ago. Was that image
But like
crafted?
the original Lehman Russ miniature was in Mark 6 power armor.
Yeah, it's like all these different things. It's like it's like each person's going to justify how they win.
Yeah, but we all know why Games Workshop made Mark 6 for the Age of Darkness box, because it's for nostalgia. It's the member berries. It was to get guys our age. Well, I'm not too sure about your age because you're like 10. But especially guys who are my age, who are grey and bald and are getting a little bit chubby, who remember things like Rogue Trader and early 2nd edition, where everything for a Space Marine was essentially Mark 6. And like that's basically what the Age of Darkness box was. It was like, we're like 35 years of 40k. Horus Heresy's back. Here's some Mark 6 again, because, you know, Rogue Trader RTB01 boxes are super popular, and everyone just looks at them and goes, "Oh my god, they're so good." They're not. They suck so badly. They look horrible compared to the new Mark 6, but everyone has a soft spot for them. And I've seen people play Horus Heresy with Rogue Trader miniatures.
It is quintessential Space Marines to have a beaky helmet. It's one of those iconic looks.
Yeah, of course. It's what we all fell in love with.
Some people don't like the heads. If you don't like biggies, there's nothing wrong with that.
Although,
but
I do have a soft spot for Mark 7.
I get it. I mean, we all played 40k with a lot of Mark 7 Marines as we grew up and played. It was mostly what we had access to.
Yeah.
It's a very new thing to have all these different like marks of armor to build your Marines out of.
I will say, even though I'm not a full Puritan, that
it's new, but it's like we've had Heresy for near 8 years now. So
it's nearly 10. It's got to be nearly 10 years.
I think it's.
I'm not getting up to get my red books to have a look, but I'm pretty sure it was 10 years.
We need to look back at it, but it's been out for. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's been out for a while. I'm going to have a look. Forge World Book 1, Horus Heresy Book 1. Let's have a look. When was that bad boy come out? There it is. Oh, fandom. There we go. Gotta love the internet. They never forget anything. The black books. Yeah, let me click on the black books. No way. Oh, holy crap, dude. Dude, it's longer than 10 years.
Oh?
That book first came out in October 2012. Damn! It's 11 years the Horus Heresy has been around.
Yeah,
wow,
so I mean...
Now I feel really old.
So, I mean, before that, I mean, people didn't really go into the different armor marks unless you had, like, a lot of cash in your back pocket.
I just want to point that out. We did. Before the Horus Heresy came out, we had a thing called Warseer. For all you young people out there, if you don't know what Warseer was, it was a forum for all things Warhammer hobby related. And on Warseer, there was a lot of us came together. It was about 18 hobbyists came together, and we all picked a legion. And this was long before the Horus Heresy was even a thing. And I think at the time, Forge World were really sort of experimenting with the sort of earlier things before they did the Badab book. And the Badab book was their sort of way of testing the water to see if a all-marine campaign type thing would work before they obviously did the Heresy. And we were building like Heresy era Space Marines, and I think we had the Visions of Heresy original books at the time with all of the
Hmm.
artwork, which some of them, by the way, are quality because you've got pictures of Emperor's Children Marines, and then underneath it says Captain such and such of the Ultramarines Legion. So funny. There's so many mistakes, but we
Yeah,
were
but,
using the artwork to sort of create Space Marines, and we were using all sorts of different kits. And I think like one of the most sought after kit was the Iron Warriors upgrade kit. Was used a lot because you could make Mark III armor out of that. Um, but yeah, it was so cool that everyone had this really weird, different sort of take. In fact, if anybody is a big fan of Games Workshop and 40k and stuff like that, and gets their White Dwarf, you may have seen a guy by the names of James Kraken, who has like sometimes has his Space Marine shared, and I think he has like some Space Wolves and stuff like that. Now his Warseer name used to be known as Spiky. Spiky. What was it? Oh, I can't remember now. It was like Spiky Jaws or something. And that's where he originally started, like before he moved into Games Workshop and actually got a job with them as an army painter. That's how he became quite well known in the community. But yeah, it's such a cool thing. Like I remember, and the whole point was we were all supposed to go to Warhammer World and play like a big game of 40k using our Heresy armies, but the Badab War come out and people lost interest and started playing Badab War.
yeah, yeah.
But it was like there was none of this. There was none of this sort of like enforcing or trying to enforce different armor marks on people at the time because we didn't know what the different armor marks were.
I mean, it's like trying to enforce something on somebody, especially whenever they're getting into a hobby, is a really dumb thing to do.
Well, I think Mike from Hellstorm Wargaming would agree with you on that.
I mean,
Carl.
you're just gatekeeping a hobby where everybody just wants to play with their miniatures.
That's
It's like
that's
we're all
exactly what Mikey said from Hellstorm Wargaming.
yeah, we're all wargamers. Why are you trying to stop people from playing just because it doesn't fit your aesthetic?
But essentially, you're not. But I can't. This is the one thing that I've always hated about the internet is when they come up with terms like gatekeeping. Nobody's stopping you. They may turn around and not like your idea and be vocal against it, but they're not coming around to your house and taking your models off you.
No,
There's no stopping you from doing anything. You can
correct.
basically just block them and just move on with your life.
I mean,
It's
certainly
like I don't get that term.
the community sort of polices itself in a way. It's like, so I was talking to you before the show about so this is taking a little bit away from the modeling side and back into the game. So the Fury of the Ancients ride a war for Space Marines, where you can take nothing but dreadnought. You don't need to field anything except dreadnoughts if you really wanted to.
100% down with that.
Nobody ever plays with it because everybody knows how powerful dreadnoughts are, right?
Yeah, I'm going to order
It's like
12.
it's the way that knights used to be treated back in the earlier editions of the game. Nobody wanted to play it because it's just too tough to take down unless you're tailoring your list.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. And the community has taken that and it's like unless you were to like pre-warn your opponent and say, by the way, guy, I'm taking a Fury of the Ancients list, so bring your biggest guns. But if you rock up to the likes of a casual campaign day or something with your however many dreadnoughts you decide to bring in tow, you're gonna be treated like scum because you are just being a dick on the tabletop.
Yeah, but we always get those guys. Like I've played Age of Sigmar and rocked up with a brand new army that's essentially been built with 2 starter sets and then a couple additional rules. It's not optimized. It's not tailored for tournaments. And I've plonked my army down with a big grin on my face, all excited to play. And then my opponent has rolled out a metal-less Skaven army, and I'm like, well, fuck. This is going to be a fun 2 hours. And it's literally just me going, I'll just remove this unit, shall I? Yeah, but you always get those people. Like, even regardless of which community.
I mean, I think that we're pretty blessed in the local community that nobody really takes that sort of I must win
We
at
we
all costs.
we have had that. I mean, I've
In the
literally
past,
had to bite my lip when someone has rolled up with an Imperial fist, breacher army in first edition, led by Sigismund and Pollux, and it's like,
listen,
oh
can't be
my god, why are you power gaming?
you cannot be mad at Tom every time he feels an
I wasn't going to mention his name. Dick.
But it's that sort of thing. I mean, there's certain things that you're going to love playing against. There's certain things you're going to hate playing against.
Yeah,
Sometimes, whatever people take, sometimes it's just a hard counter to whatever you're doing, and you didn't even realize because you just wanted to field your cool things.
I think,
Which,
but rule of cool always wins regardless. So,
oh,
but like,
100%.
but like, if for anybody who's listening that is just about to get into the heresy, and you're instantly like, oh my god, I can't take whatever you want, build your models however you want.
Yep.
Right? Like, just do
Typically,
it. Just do it.
typically, like dreadnoughts. People have found themselves following the sort of like unspoken rule that it's like one dreadnought per 1,000 points and stuff, and it's that sort of that that came with time, and that came with trying the rules and playing with the models and
I still
realizing.
wouldn't follow that.
And it's been an evolution of the individual player to go. Actually, this isn't fun to play with against this. It's not fun to just take these dreadnoughts and win every fight that I go into.
Yeah, but I think Games Workshop, the easiest way Games Workshop can fix that is just by putting the points up on dreadnoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's still questionable. I mean, the dreadnought is still way too cheap.
Yeah,
Leviathan,
so just
but the contemporary
just make them more expensive.
cheap. Yeah,
And that's the same. That's an easy FAQ for Games Workshop to fix.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, we're not here to like bash or to overall praise like the rule set. It's like I like the rule set. There's problems with it, but I still like it. And whenever they fix it, we'll go along with that, and we'll see how it all plays out.
yeah, well, to jump back on the topic in regards to the Age of Darkness box and the perceptions of the armor type and stuff. I do remember a big debate happening, and a lot of the social media influencers that were invited to that event, a lot of them I disagreed with being invited because they weren't heresy content creators. Especially when we have such good heresy content creators on Instagram that were completely ignored by Games Workshop. But some of these individuals decided to make comments in regards to people can do whatever they want with their armies, paint them whatever colours they want, and generally just play it like a 40k army. Now, that ruffled a lot of feathers in the heresy community.
I can see why. Like, the people who play the game are protective over it.
Yes, you even had, like, Mikey from Hellstone Wargaming coming out and making a tweet that he was going to change the heresy community and drive the gatekeepers out. By the way, Mike, if you are listening, I'm still waiting for you to do that a year on. But the thing is, the heresy community will always do what the heresy community has done for the past 10, 11 years. And that's just enjoy their game. We were always going to get Puritans, and you get some of them that will be vocal about certain armors being used for certain points in the story. That's cool. That in their head, their narrative is we only had access to certain armor types in the early days, and that's fine.
That's a restriction the person's imposing on themselves.
Exactly.
It's whenever it goes beyond that, and people are then saying, what are you putting Mark 7 armor in your army for? That's the bit that I think is a little bit too far.
But then you counter that by going, because my army's based in the late stages of the Horus Heresy, around about the Siege of Terra.
Yeah, I mean, there's
all of the Loyalist legions had access to it.
There's all sorts of reasons as to why you would use that sort of mark, and really nobody should be questioning you about what you're doing with your money to build your army.
Exactly, but I think what people have what people have an issue with regards to the Mark 7 is not so much the Mark 7 kit itself, because there's parts of Mark 4 in there, there's parts of Mark 6.
Yeah.
I think what people have an issue with that Mark as a whole is that the Mark 7 armor traditionally comes with the Aquila on the chest plate.
Well,
And that
I've
is
said
what
before.
rips people up. Now, obviously, we know that the
Armour
Emperor's
children.
Children, but the thing is, if we read the newer Heresy novels, especially the Siege of Terror, we know that in the latter stages of the Heresy, that the Loyalists started to wear the Aquila more openly and more often because, one, it was a show of loyalty to the Emperor, and two, it was a more of a big middle finger to the traitor legions because it was a mark of the Emperor. So
Yeah.
if you're modeling your army for definitely a Siege of Terror, so Imperial Face Blood Angels, White Scars, certain elements of the Dark Angels, and Salamanders, and some Iron Hands and stuff that were based on Terror at the time during the siege, then yeah, there is nothing stopping you whatsoever of going complete mad and having Mark 6, Mark 7, and any other mark of armor in there, because at that point, yeah, realistically you could get it. And if someone argues that, then you just go, but it's a Siege of Terror army. Like, I'm basing this on the current Black Library novels.
I
There in black and white.
would like to challenge anybody to freely, if an army was deployed in front of you, freely be able to turn around and go, hang on, that's not the right mark of armor.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think these
But
people ever will say it personally. They say
Nobody
it on
ever
the internet.
Stuff.
Yeah, they would say it on
It's
the
like
internet.
you'll get a few people who'll come. It's like certainly from personal experience. It's like you're playing with somebody else. You're playing with your opponent.
Yeah.
And if people decide to come from other places just to sort of look at your army and just sort of take it all in. And this happened to me last night, and I had people coming up to the table and saying, "Wow, this is really cool. Is this 40k?" And turning around and saying, "No, this is Horus Heresy." And whenever I've noticed this more through Horus Heresy is that whenever you say that it's not 40k, they get sort of like a twinkle in their eye, and they're suddenly interested.
Yeah, but then I also think that the
But I think it's just
Heresy community was worried with second edition that we were going to get an influx of 40k players coming in and bringing the 40k mentality into the game. I don't think that's happened. I think that was a lot of fear mongering by people that were anti 40k. I don't think the game has taken on an ultra competitive twist. Like, some people will be ultra competitive, but from what I've seen, and especially in the communities online that I'm involved in the Heresy, it seems to be the Heresy community doing the Heresy community like they've done for the last decade.
Yeah, I mean the Heresy community has been nothing but nice to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean I'm on a few groups. So I'm on mainly the Space Wolf one on Facebook for the 30k players, the Velka and Riker group.
I'm in
And
that one.
I mean they are nothing but a good bunch of people, and they just share their work in progress. They share armies as like games that they've been working on, all sorts of things. And it's like there's never really any bad discussions on there. There's a few people who'll turn around and say, "Oh, it's like I don't like this unit, or I don't like this unit, or whatever else." And I would always try and tell people, it's like you don't need to use official models if you don't want to.
As in 3D printed?
What I mean by that is like as the Space Wolf example, Varagir. It's like I don't own any of those models, and I won't.
God,
but
no.
I built my own out of plastic Varagir and a bunch of different parts that I had, and I made them look cool.
Yeah.
You don't need to go to that expensive level to get to the unit that you're after. I mean, I started out, as we mentioned, very early on, before Space Wolves even had rules. And whenever they did drop, none of our units existed in Forge World, so I just went and scratch built them.
Yeah, it
Um,
was. The one thing that I've always loved about the Heresy, playing Horus Heresy, is the fact that you are so free and encouraged by the community, your local community, and like we've got a really good community here, and the guys that have come in since second edition are like fantastic, and the online communities of like I'm not joking. I'm in a Salamander group on Facebook, and the other week there was a over 250 comments on a post talking about the finities of converting a flamer to look more salamandery. Now, like this comment went from you can use the little demon-y type heads from the Chaos kits to people sharing 3D printed and
yeah,
sculpted parts for different not like this was a 250 plus comment
yeah.
literally about a nozzle at the end of a flamer, and I'm like, this is hilarious. Like
But
it doesn't change what it does, but this is so good that people have passion for this.
it does say a good thing about the community that they will come up with suggestions for
Oh
things that
yeah,
you're wanting
so
to
good,
do,
so good.
because you're never going to be in that position where nobody has ever done this before,
Yeah, like even the
and there's
people like
always going to be.
suggesting the chaos parts, which do fit really well because it's dragony type looking, and like instantly. Normally, if you'd have done that in a 40k group, you would be instantly flamed and burned and tortured for even suggesting having Chaos Space Marine parts on your Loyalist Marines. But like the Salamander group was like, yeah, that would work. That would look really cool.
So
Like, use two of them.
I helped a friend of mine get into Heresy. Now he's yet to play his first game yet, and he wanted to do a word bearers for it. And while I would never question anybody on their Legion choices, I said, okay, right. So what do you need? And this was back in first edition, so it was like, okay, so you want to get yourself a number of Marines so that you're able to turn them into your like tac squads and stuff. You might want to look at like Gal Vorback and a few of the Forge World Gucci pieces, but he was saying about it was like, oh well, what do I do for likes of my Praetor or my HQs and stuff? And my first thought and my first comment to him was, well, why don't you just get some Chaos Marine characters because
Oh, the
they look really good.
the Dark
And
Apostle, the current Dark Apostle is perfect.
there's
Absolutely
a
perfect
chaos
for a word bearer's Praetor.
there's a Chaos Lord that was brought out a few years ago, and he's got a massive thunder hammer.
Yeah,
And I recommend it. It's like that's the sort of guy that you want is like your power armored Praetor. It's like because you don't at that time word bearers didn't have their unique Praetor out or anything.
hmm.
And it was really just a case of, well, what do you want? Is like this guy has some cool war gear options on him, no conversion required at all. He just needs a slap of paint on him to make him look like the other word bearers, and he'll fit in because word bearers are chaos of the 30k universe,
Yeah,
and that's they certainly, in my mind, gel best with like the Chaos Marine kits,
yeah.
which
I
you can
mean, but
then.
I mean the Gal Vorbak. I mean, if you don't want to pay the very expensive prices for the resin models, the new plastic possessed are on the same size bases and work
You
exactly the same.
can, but those models are beautiful, and I would never turn my. I mean, even as a non-word bearer player, I think the Galvorback are some of the prettiest sculpts that Forge World produced for 30k.
They have, and they are, but again, they're expensive. For the price of
But yeah,
five of them, you can
it
buy
it
10
comes down to your
from
budget.
10
It
plastics.
comes down to your budget. Comes down to the theme that you want. There's multiple factors, but really, you go with what you want to play with. It's
Yeah,
like if you think that model's cool, that model's cool.
yeah. There's
And that's, I
it's
mean, there's not,
I don't think
it's
anyone's really gonna. I'd like to hope in our local community no one's ever going to pull you for running a certain model. I went through like looking possibly doing the World Eaters for 30k and going, well, I've already got them for 40k. Can I use that? And it was like, well, what base size is Karn in 30k? And everyone's like, he's on 32 mil, and he's on a 40 mil base in 40k. So I can't really switch that over because
at the same time, it's a single marine size model.
Yeah,
It didn't really matter.
But it kind of does because obviously your a larger base allows you to get into more enemy models around your circumference, which means you can essentially hit more things. But
yeah, but then
I get it. But I wouldn't feel comfortable running Karn on a 40 mil base when he's meant to be on the 32 because that's a little bit different.
You can also go in the opposite direction. I mean, I've played against some people with like Primarch fights. We're always like a mainstay during. Well, they are a big part of like 30k. Whenever Primarchs are on the board, typically things are going to get wrecked.
Oh yeah, Primarchs they're your centerpiece models.
But most people take them off their scenic base and use them on their 40 mil base. But sometimes you just couldn't be arsed taking it out of that scenic base, and everybody just wants to have a cool looking centerpiece model. I've never had an issue of people doing that.
I think if both players are bringing Primarchs and they both have their scenic bases with them, and they both decide before the game, let's run the scenic bases, I have no problem with the 50 mil base. But what I would have is if one player has it and the other one doesn't, then it's like
it's that whole thing for modeling for advantage. Because you're not modeling for advantage at that point. It's just that's what it has, and they want to make it a little bit more epic on the tabletop.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas you'll have some people who'll turn up as like it's like in the old days of 40k, there were some weird players who would have changed out for like the maximum base size that they could get away with.
Did you ever remember seeing that guy's army where he'd modelled them so they were all laying on the ground?
Yeah. So
literally, so he could always got cover behind everything because you couldn't see the models.
Yeah, it was. I think it was an Eldar toy army because they wanted to hide behind the tank and shoot under the tank. I mean, really daft ideas, but you know what? If you're going to model every model line pro,
fair play,
crack on.
Yeah,
crack on.
Fair play. It's I mean,
it's the same for people who decide to model models that are jumping off the ground. What are they called? That Blood Angel unit. The Dawnbreakers?
Oh, yeah. Like they come with the flying stands.
Yeah, so they
like
come
2
with
inches in the sky.
Yeah, it's like you're not modeling for advantage on that army because they're always a bit taller than everything else on the board.
Yeah.
I mean, you could take them off their flight stands and put them on the ground, but their feet wouldn't match up unless you do a little bit of conversion work and make them a little bit more what would you call it? Presentable on the ground. Because I think most of them would be on like tippy toes if you took them off their like flight stands.
I think so, yeah.
But it's that sort of thing. It's just like if you're going to model for advantage. I mean, I've not seen anybody do it in 30k.
No.
Everybody in the 30k community seems to be very much. It's like this is like if you're doing like an addition project or whatever else, they like to make it all look the same. They want to make it all uniform because like vast legion armies, it's not like 40k where it's like small bits and pieces. 30k is very good at showing off like even at a 3k game, which would be your typical. Not for us yet, but sort of like the standardized size that most people talk about on the internet. It's like you can fit a lot of dudes in there compared to a 40k army of the past.
You can. I also think the fact that like we do share the same mentality as traditional historical wargamers. Like I don't think we're as extreme as the old guys playing the Republic.
Yeah.
I don't think we're as extreme as those guys in regards to like everything has to be like exactly like it was back in that like, historical event they're playing. Like I remember the historical war game was coming to our club up in Ards, and like I would sit when I was like right looking after it being on when I was doing the volunteering, and I was there in the morning and they were setting up and playing. I used to like have to like hide behind the counter and like try not to giggle out loud because of the heated debates that they were having because someone's
Oh.
cavalry didn't look like they were supposed to, and it was just like this is just so hilarious. Like
But then
seriously,
I mean, back in those days, I mean, those sort of same observations came from myself, and I think the funniest one was whenever the historic wargamers were playing their Napoleonic era stuff, and then obviously the table beside them, somebody's playing a game of 40k or War Machine,
yeah,
and the historical wargamers were the ones to sort of like grunched their nose up at anybody playing not historic, and
yes,
it was always
yes.
it was always a weird thing. It's like,
Yeah,
eh,
it is a very weird mentality to have, and I
but
do
then I
think like
suppose it's the same way with, I suppose. I mean, I'm completely guessing at this point, but I'm sure that there's some like Age of Sigmar players that just don't like 40k, and they'll do that same sort of facial
not
expression.
sort of, but I think most of the time we get like Age of Sigmar players get that a lot, and it's normally from players that used to play Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Like they look at
Yeah,
Age of Sigmar and their face twists in disgust straight away, and it's like, oh my god, what are you playing that for? Why are you playing that child's game?
I mean,
Should have
it's
them
going to be.
ranked up, and it's like, jog on, mate, go outside and touch grass.
I think
Um,
I think it would be interesting whenever Old World comes out, and we get to see how that is, and
I, I
how many people go from Age of Sigmar back to Old World.
I have no interest in it, and I played a lot of Fantasy Battle back in the day.
I
I have
think
no interest
the
in it.
the initial announcement for it, I don't think was very good because it's really limiting in what armies are actually going to be
Yeah,
focused on.
I was really excited up until Warhammer Fest, and then when they decided to just show two models and basically go, we're basically releasing a load of old stuff, and we're kind of adding new models and new units to the old stuff. But basically, it's like the old game, and we're just like updating the rules. And there's no starter set, there's no launch box, and it was like, cool, Age of Sigmar, yeah, go, brilliant. But like for me, I, as you know, I'm more of a painter and a modeler than the gamer. I'm not really that competitive when it comes to gaming. I more enjoy the aesthetic journey and the narrative elements of a game. That's what flicks my switches. You know, when you get that one lone tactical sergeant that's all he's left of his squad running around with his power fist, and he's knocking the shit out of other units throughout the rest of the game. Eventually, that's for me. That's like that's the cool things I want to see. Um,
Yeah, so
so
I have those same sort of experiences as well. Like going to the narrative events that we've been sort of running
yeah,
for second edition going on. It's like the idea is like it's that prompt of you can take what you like, but try and make like a little back. It's like add a little bit of fluff to it
yeah,
yourself.
but
It's like you don't need to,
that little
but
sergeant I will
give it a
name.
go.
You know that sergeant will earn his name by the end of that game, and like he'll be known as Sid. From now on, Sid's coming to my games, and
Well, I have.
everyone in the community will know who Sid is because
Yeah, I
it'll be
mean,
like
I
that's
did
Sid.
the same sort of thing. It's like the first narrative thing that I did for second edition is like I obviously took a space before, so I decided to stay away from named characters. But I named my leader guy, and he was the hero of this story.
Yeah,
And it culminated in a like a big apocalypse game with two traitors and then three loyalists on one side with smaller forces compared to the traitors.
yeah,
And I mean, I was systematically targeted in that game where I was wiped out before the other two loyalist players, which understandable. People thought I was a threat, but I decided after that campaign day, I was like, oh, the leader of my entire army was wiped out, but the story is going to be that the leader was able to get recovered, and I went and bought out a dreadnought. and he's going to get slapped into that because he did so well. And that's sort of, it's like those little stories that you make up for yourself, or models that did really well and you want to continue using, and it's like their own little legacy in your campaign events.
Yeah.
Which is entirely my bag.
Oh yeah, I love that, and it's like I like right now, like I've started building my infantry now for my salamanders, and I've built half the contemptor because I've got to do a lot of sculpting. But like I I want my salamanders to look like the art plates in the books, and
Yeah, those
like
things are like scale coils and sergeants.
that's
If I
what I
could-
want. I want to put my army down on the board, and for you guys to go, that looks awesome, that Rick. That
Yeah,
looks that looks awesome.
and the community is very good, and I have to hand on heart say that the community is very good for supporting
Oh yeah,
other
see
the other players.
see the other night we
It's
had
just that
Matt and
it's
Sasha were playing, and
yeah.
like obviously Matt made the comment, and this is what prompted this subject today for today's podcast. Because he referred to himself as a historical wargamer, which made me chuckle, because I was like, yes, we are. But and it obviously then prompted like the sort of remembering heated discussions amongst the people about certain model types. But when I actually looked at their armies, like they're both really well painted. Like Sasha's Ultramarines are really good, and Matt's Sons of Horus is
amazing.
yeah, they've done a fantastic job on him. And it was just like I looking at that, and then I was like looked over at some of the 40k stuff that was being played, and it was like, wow, the level here compared to the level there is a completely different ballpark.
There's definitely an objective to the hobby that the 30k players have over the 40k players.
Yeah.
And there is a goal in mind, whereas an awful lot of 40k that I've seen is like I've seen some players play for more than a decade and they've never put any paint on a model.
I have seen people turn up with to Age of Sigmar events and they've literally airbrushed their models 3 different colours, and it's basically 3 different shades of green, and it's like a dark green all over, then a lighter green, and then a really light green on the very top of the model. And
yeah,
and I for me as a painter, I look at that and go, you're paying a lot of money for this, and that's what you're doing. Like, come on, guys! Like, at least pretend that you give a crap.
But then don't forget, Rick, that's their choice.
It is, but it's this stuff isn't.
Yeah,
this stuff isn't
I know
cheap.
it hurts you,
It really does. It hurts me. It hurts my soul. No, please, people, at least paint battle ready. At least paint battle ready.
It's all about you. You need to concentrate on your own stuff rather than what other people are doing.
I get the rip
And
out of me all the time with my painting.
You will always find that there's somebody who is now, again, it happens less in the 30k local community for us because everybody's working toward adding, painting. They're doing something to their force. It's never just left stagnant.
But I think that's a lot down to the guys that have come into the community that kind of started off doing Titanicus first. Like, the guys that play Titanicus, like, when they turn up to play, they bring their own terrain and everything. And their boards are insanely good. Like, holy crap. It's all 3D printed or it's proper GW kits. And it's all well painted. And then the Titans are really well done as well. And a lot of those guys are playing 30k now.
An awful lot of them have picked it up as a second system.
Yeah, and they've come in with that same mentality, and like Matt's one of them. Like, his army is beautiful, and it's like, I like this a lot, because
I do think it is very important to mention that whenever people around you are painting and hobbying, it makes it easier for you to do
it. Yes, like
because whenever nobody gives a crap, you'll not give a crap.
Like there is a
Whereas
running.
whenever everybody's like doing their work in progresses and it's like they've finished off like their test models and stuff, it's like we are the happiest people in the world whenever we go, hey guys, look what I just did. And
I do that with my
if
girlfriend.
it's either feedback or there might be criticism, and criticism isn't always a bad thing. And it's just those ways that the local community just sort of try and band together and say, oh, do you know, if you want to do this sort of unit, then it's like I can get you a few bits. I've got spares. It's like whether you're paying a few quid for it or whether they're just handing it to you because they're never going to use it. It's just a great community feeling,
Yeah.
and everybody's really really supportive.
There's a running joke amongst a lot of people here at the Exploding Dice regarding my painting that I'm a master at only painting a leg.
It is. I have heard this over the past wee while. Yes.
Yes, I am. Because the problem with me is I paint to such a high standard that I will paint a leg to test
You're.
that scheme out, and then that generally is what I do. I've painted that now. I'm on to the next thing, and everyone's
Yeah.
like, just
It's
paint the
been a
model,
long.
just paint
It's
the
been
whole
a
thing.
long time since you've had a proper project to be passionate about.
Sink by yes, it is. But one thing I will say about the whole criticism thing with painting, I don't I don't do I don't agree with criticism when it comes to people's painting because unless you're an award-winning painter, you have zero rights to criticize anyone's work.
I,
Um,
I don't. I don't think it's about the right to criticize. I think
I
that.
think it's more encouragement. Like, and
Yeah.
I get asked a lot of like, how do I paint this? How do I paint that?
Mhm,
And a lot of the
mhm.
times it's like you can look at someone's paintwork and go, okay, I can see what level you're at. Now, if you apply this technique or you apply a shade or a wash here, you'll get this result. A lot of the time, and I hate it when you get somebody who isn't very good at painting, but they're ultra proud of what they do, and they're like, "Look at this, Rick! Look how cool this is," and I'm like, "That's amazing, dude." And then I have people come up to me and go, "Seriously?" And I'm like, "Dude, you can't turn around to them and say it looks shit, because that's just going to
No, I
crush
would.
them.
I would never.
You
I would
have to
never turn around and
you
say
have to say it's
somebody's
good."
somebody's work is shit, because I mean
No,
everybody's at a different level whenever it
exactly.
comes to that, and some people don't like painting, some people don't like building,
Yeah,
and
with
there's a certain level of like passion that you can ever attain,
there is.
and it's what you get out of it is what you put in. But it's like if somebody were to come up as like it's their first miniatures that they decided to paint for Horus Heresy, and they want feedback. And sure, it might not be the best paint job in the world. That's not what we're talking about. It's like I would try and give them those like
Yeah,
insight
I
and
have
say, like,
seen
oh, if you
people.
want to improve, you could do
Yeah,
this, and that would make these models really pop from what you've done. You'd never turn around and say, "Oh, mate, you've done really, really terribly with these. These need
but I have
more
seen people
clean."
do that. Like I have sat there in a Games Workshop store, and like a small kid has been super psyched that they finished the Space Marine, and then this adult has literally just pissed all over it, and it's
Or
you're looking at them going, you can't even paint yourself, you dickhead.
yeah,
Shut up. And I hate it. I don't.
no, I don't. I don't buy
There's
into that,
yeah.
that negativity.
There's constructive criticism, and
Must-
I'm good at doing that by going, okay, if you refine this, you'll get this result. But yeah, it's like I hate the whole. I hate it when someone comes down on someone's painting because a lot of the times they don't really
Giving
paint themselves.
yeah, giving nothing but negative feedback
Yeah,
is just
it's bad.
negative and isn't helpful.
It doesn't help with painting whatsoever because it's a hard thing to do.
And it,
Um,
it doesn't help with modeling either, because some
no,
people some people I mean I try to make my models look dynamic. I make them look like they're not in like any weird poses, and it's like they're not overstretched in weird positions. But that's very much how I want to represent my miniatures on the board. Not everybody agrees. Some people
yeah,
want to have their weapons like waving over their heads or like pointed in weird directions, and that's absolutely fine because that's what you have done.
yeah. it's interesting. You, just be
Yeah,
humble when it comes to your hobby. And
you beat.
I learned that off a lot of really amazing painters. That if you ever get to go to somewhere like Warhammer Fest, and you ever actually get to meet Richard Gray, who's a multiple award winning painter, Slayer Sword winner, he is the most humblest guy I have ever met. Like the most humblest. Like you will sit there and just be like proper fanboying over him, and the guy is like, yeah, man, I just went with it, just went with the flow. I just really
Yeah, I
chilled,
mean, I
and then he starts pointing out his own mistakes, and you're like, I don't see any mistakes. Then he's like, yeah, you see this bit here, and you're like, no way, you don't make mistakes, you're God. But it's just, but yeah, just be humble with your painting. Like be proud of what you've done, and enjoy it, and then celebrate it. But like if someone says anything negative about your painting, just look at them and just like laugh.
so just for a little bit of context. So I think I touched on this, but I build the majority of the stuff for my own army.
You do.
However, I paint none of it.
One day I will teach you to paint my young Padawan.
Now, I mean, I can paint. I just couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, some people just don't. I hate building.
I love building. I
Do you?
love it because it feels like I can put the character into each and every model in the
Oh,
unit,
I hate it.
and I just love all the different like little poses that you're able to do from like the plastic kits and stuff. And yes, I get that an awful lot of people complain about the likes of the Mark 6 units because they're all very like you get 5 poses in the box, right?
Oh, I I like
So
Mark Six. Like the only thing I will say about the Mark Six that's a problem is the studded shoulder pad.
because it's in 2 parts.
The way that they've done it, yeah. But I understand why they've done it is so that we actually get proper studs rather than weird
Like
longest,
little
yeah, like that,
pinpricks.
like they are on the Mark Seven kit. So I understand why they've done it from a manufacturing reason, but I still don't have to like it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I find whenever I was doing my production line on Mark 6 armor, because I very famously I have an awful lot of like Forge World pads for my army,
yeah,
a lot of Legion insignia, but there's some units in that army where I just went, nah, they can get a studded shoulder pad and then they can get a unit marking on the other one instead of getting a wolf head
yeah.
because I'm not a big fan of transfers. I prefer the molded stuff,
Why,
and I
why do you not like decals? Is it because you don't understand? You're not good at
so
using them,
it's
or you
not.
just don't like them as
So
a thing?
there's a few things from the earlier works in the army where I did use the transfers, especially in the likes of the Tartarus Terminators and the Mark IV Marines.
Yeah,
But those first few squads that I built were pretty much just what I had in plastic and what I had from like spare parts lying around.
right.
I hadn't gone out to Forge World and like put in a massive order for a bunch of stuff that they just produced. I
So,
just wanted.
so what
So
was it with the decal that you don't like?
I find that the decal is just it's fiddly. Sometimes it has like a really crappy, like shiny sheen to it compared to the
Right.
rest of the model
Okay.
because I like that like down and dirty look.
Okay.
Like all of my 30K stuff looks like it's like got dust and dirt and grime over it.
Okay.
Um, it's like there's always like dust kick up and things, and I was able to go through with the guy who paints all my stuff and says, right, I want my models to look like this,
Right.
and he was able to turn around and go, I've done the tester. What do you think? I give him a bit of feedback. He changes it, and then once that's done, then he cracks on with the rest of the force, right? And the transfers went on as like obviously that's what we had, so requested all that, and I've tried putting transfers on myself, but I just don't think they'll look great because it just doesn't look as good
So
as
right.
those
Okay.
mold, as
So
those molded
right.
those molded.
Okay. So the one thing about decals and the finisher decals and everything else is like there's putting the decals on, and there's when you put the decals on. So for the likes of the Grim Dark, that's a style if anyone doesn't know. That weathered, beaten up sort of a look. Now, you would put the decals onto the miniature before doing all of the beating up stuff. And even if you put them on at the end, the easiest way to do, and there are certain chemicals that you can use for decals to make your life so much easier, and it's called Microsol and Microset. There's a blue bottle and a red bottle. The red bottle actually dissolves the filament that the decal's printed on to the point where it leaves just the ink. Now it does take some time for that to happen. You normally have to leave it for a couple of hours, sometimes overnight, for it to completely dissolve, and then you can it will. And I imagine that you've probably had the issue that everybody's had when they put a decal onto a Space Marine shoulder pad and it just does not sit flat. You get those little bumps and ridges in it.
Well, it's because you're going from a flat surface to a 3D surface.
So what the Microsol and Microsets does is actually smooth that out, and it allows it to melt and allow it to form around the model.
To me, it still sounds like a lot of effort.
It is and it isn't. Once you get used to using the stuff, it's actually very easy. And as regarding to the shine and that, yes, decals are very gloss finish. Now, you can do two things here. You can allow it to fully dry and fully allow the Microsol to fully evaporate. And then apply either a matte varnish over the top of it, and it'll completely dull it down straight away, or Lamian's medium. Now, if you are going to use the matte varnish, and you have used Microsol and Microset, be very, very careful that none of that chemical is still on the model before you apply that varnish, because the varnish will instantly turn to gulp. It will thicken up, and it will just go horribly bad, and trying to clean that off is a nightmare. So if you are applying the decals and you do want to seal them, give it a good 12 hours before you go anywhere near it.
This is why I don't really want to touch that decal, because it's just a bunch of extra steps for whenever I could just go. And I know I'm spending the extra money to go that extra mile.
No,
I don't need to use the transfer.
Yeah, but I get it. Some people get really worried about decals, and yeah, I was the same when I first started using them, until I actually learned to do them properly by, amazingly, watching historical war modelers do like World War II tanks and planes and stuff. And a lot of the techniques that guys like me use in regards to weathering and stuff comes from that gene. But we're literally going into a complete different subject matter now. But yes, it's things like that. I can do tutorials for,
at the same time, people don't be daunted by not putting transfers on.
And I would say, don't be off-put by any hobby technique. Like any technique is, just do it, and if it doesn't work, strip it, reprime it, and then go again, or just refine it. As long as the paint isn't too thick, you can generally paint over it multiple times. But just don't be scared to try anything new and crazy like that, because that's the whole, that you're only going to get better by doing it.
It's the only way you learn, right?
Yeah, exactly. But as regards to the topic and the Mark 6 in general, I like this kit. I think it's one of the better kit. I'm really excited to see the new and improved Mark 3.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the Mark 3. I'm still holding out hope for Mark 5, because I want to add Mark 5 to the army more than Mark 2 or Mark 3.
I imagine that because, like, let's be honest, we're not getting a new edition every 3 years, because Games Workshop just can't do that. So I would imagine that Horus Heresy will be around for quite some time before we get a third edition.
Let's go another 10 years.
Yeah, well, hopefully, but we will definitely see new things get done. So I can
Yeah,
imagine likes of the Mark IV kit getting upgraded. I can imagine Mark V and Mark II kits being added to the range. I can see the Tartarus and the Cataphracti Terminators also being redone and rescaled to a larger scale, which is amazingly what they've done with the Forge World resin
I
versions
really
of
hope
those
they
armor
don't.
marks. And I can see them doing that. And I've got no problem with them doing it because
Yeah.
these kits were sculpted 13 years ago. And
The Mark IVs are the earliest plastic Horus Heresy stuff that we've got,
yeah, so
and
that would have been 13 years. If Heresy's 11 years old now, then they
they came
normally
out with
they're normally about two. They normally sculpt things 2 years before it's generally released. So if the Calth box came out 11 years ago, which it kind of I think it did,
yeah, I think that, yeah.
then you're looking at that Mark IV kit being at least 13 years old.
Yeah,
So
because we've obviously got to remember that the first edition of Heresy did not start in plastic, and the Betrayal of Calthbox was not the first thing out for it. It was the first time that we got plastic for it, but up until that point, most of us were working from like Forge World kits and things.
yeah, but I think I'm pretty
But
sure.
whenever Calth happened and whenever it dropped, it much like how the Burning of Prospero and the Age of Darkness boxes have also done, it created that influx
Yeah,
and it created that appeal for
I
people to be able to
did.
play in the game.
When did Betrayal of Calth come out? Let's have a little look.
Google please.
Wow, my spelling is so bad. Oh, there we go. Let's have a little gander.
I
So,
think it was 2016
yeah,
is whenever that.
so November 2015. So it come out nearly 3 years after book one.
Yeah. So, I
So,
mean, we were 3 years into the game before we got our first proper plastics for the game,
so
and that convinced a lot of people to start playing Heresy.
so
Uh,
looking at how Games Workshop generally sculpt things, those plastic kits were probably going into sculpting at that stage when they were just releasing book one.
yeah,
So,
entirely possible.
well,
Obviously,
that
we don't
more
have
than likely.
concrete evidence, but
Yeah.
more than likely,
Well, not
they were.
well. Looking at
They were in
the
the
time
design
frame is
process.
normally 2 to 2.5 years sculpted before it's released. So the fact that there's about just over 3 years difference between the book one Black Book and the Horus Heresy Betrayal of Calth box coming out,
Yeah,
there's a good chance that that book was done and they already knew that they were going to be doing plastics at that stage. So
yeah,
when that book was released, they would be in the planning stages of the plastics.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that was obviously their goal and intention of doing plastics
Hmm.
when bringing the Horus Heresy out. So,
Are, are you are you
but a
sure
lot
that
of
the
what's that?
are you sure the Betrayal of Calthbox wasn't meant as a standalone game though?
I definitely not. They knew fine well that no one really cared about that board game element. But at the time, Games Workshop were doing this with a lot of things because we had a lot of like mini board game things coming out, but essentially it was just a way for them to release the miniatures. They're doing exactly the same thing with the um, Lieutenant Titus model for Space Marine 2.
Yeah,
He's
he's getting his own like little.
he's getting a miniature. Everyone who plays the miniatures, everyone that plays 40k and especially Ultramarines is super excited about getting this character on the tabletop. But the only way to get him is by buying a stupid little board game that nobody's going to play because people are only going to buy it to get hold of that Titus model. And it's kind
Yeah,
of a way for Games Workshop to make more money because they'll charge more.
it's not even a combat patrol. It's
Yeah,
literally
I have no
new
idea what it
team.
is. It's just basically him versus Gene Stealers by the looks of it, or the new gods.
Is it
So
just me, or is his model not that cool?
I like it. I like it.
It's just
Um,
really brilliant.
Yeah, I like it. I like him as a character. He's really cool. I'm really looking forward to Space Marine 2.
He doesn't have the voice of Mark Strong anymore, so I'm less invested in him, to be honest.
No, but he has the voice of Rollo from Vikings.
Okay.
He's the guy that does the voice for him now. So, yeah, I remember the picture they had up on Instagram with him coming to Warhammer World and they were showing him around.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
that's cool.
it's very cool. But, like, so getting back onto it, I do think that there's a lot of essential things that they can do to these kits now, because obviously sculpting software has got better, 3D printers for the masters are better, their tooling processes are a lot better, their frame engineers, the guys that actually take those 3D models and break it down and put it onto the frame that we then
Yeah,
buy, are
I think
way better at doing what they now than what they were doing like 10 years ago. So I
now
think we can get some really, really cool stuff.
I do think that even though even though we have been praising the new kits, and there is justification for that praise in what they've done with the kits.
Yeah,
The one thing that they dropped their ball with was those not including anything other than bolters. It's like those despoiler kits are
don't
just
don't
dumb.
don't knock the arms, man.
I think it's
I'm doing it.
like I have no problem with 5 different poses of a
I am
marine.
so spending £40 on 2 of those packs,
Ugh.
and it's going to be the greatest 10-man despoiler squad anyone's ever seen.
I just they dropped the ball for access to so many of the unit types
I
going in.
I have no problem with them doing it. Um, with the
I
kit.
think that if
The
they
thing
if
that
they
irritates
do,
me about the kit is it's only for 5 models. It should be for a unit of 10. There should be 10 close combat arms in there, and I'd be happy even with one of the big two-handed weapons rather than
yeah,
two. But for nearly £20, £19.50 to be exact, is taking the piss.
yeah,
They should have made it a ten model box.
it's as you say. I mean, the spoilers can be taken at minimum 10 men, and you
Yeah,
get
yeah, you
five
get
guys
five.
worth of
Yeah, yeah. So that was
not
that
not
that's
including
a
not including the power axe and
yeah
the heavy chain
that's
sword
a
that you get.
it's a piss take out of them. Now, hopefully, later on in the year, spring next year, we'll get the close combat weapon box, and I imagine that's going to be the one with all the power fist, the specialist close combat weapons, and that the assault marine kit will probably only come with like a power sword, maybe a power fist for the sergeant, and maybe a lightning claw, maybe like they kind of done with the tactical
Consider
squad. In fact,
that
I can actually imagine, and I've got it sat right next to me, that that sprue that you get with the tactical squad, I can imagine that sprue being put, or a similar type of sprue being put in with the Salt Marines.
Yeah, I think it would be a little bit of disservice from GW's side if they didn't include the extra special weapons, because obviously just spoilers can
No,
take
no,
a combat weapon for every
no,
1 in 5.
no. I can
Um,
see Games Workshop selling us a box of 20 Assault Marines with a little command sprue in it with your Vox and your power fist or your power sword and maybe a little
so,
thing to make it into a lightning claw and lots of
so that
pouches and bolt
command
pistols. Um,
that command sprue already exists in the standard kit, sort
yes,
of.
but I can.
You
But
get like a
that's
power sword, you get your Nuncio Vox and
yeah.
Vexilla and things
I
like
can
that.
see them. I can see them putting that sprue or something similar to that sprue in with the assault marines, and then the close combat box thing that they've said talked about to be all of your additional close combat, like the specialist weapon guns and the heavy weapon kits.
Yeah,
But I could also see them putting 10 backpacks in there as well. So when you buy your assault marines, you can't make them despoilers because the power packs won't be there. I don't. Now I'm hoping. I hope. I really do hope they prove me wrong. that when you buy that Assault Marine kit, it comes with 20 or 10 Marines, and you get power packs and normal jump packs. And you can make. I can see GW putting those additional 10 power packs to make them into despoilers into a separate box.
Because you're gonna get Assault Marine only ones because they have the backpack harness.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get a standard loadout whenever they drop the Assault Marine box, where you can have a despoiler squad instead of a tactical
But
squad.
Essentially, if it's a 10-man box with Assault Marines,
it likely will be, well,
hopefully.
all the Marine boxes now are 20 man strong.
But isn't the max size for an Assault Squad 15?
20.
Is it 20? Well, hopefully it'll be 20. But if there's enough close combat weapons in the other box, then we're going to have spare close combat weapons from that Assault Squad.
Which has been a long time coming.
Which then means that we'll be able to kit bash them with the tactical squads to make despoilers.
Now, I'm looking forward to the part of their roadmap was actually a command squad element.
Yes, can't wait for that.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that.
It'll have an apothecary, it'll have a vet sarge, it'll have a banner bearer.
It'll have your banner bearer, it won't have your apothecary and stuff. It's not a 40 command squad.
They might throw in a non-independent character apothecary. Or have the parts to build one.
I mean, I would love that, but I mean, I have two of the Forge. I have one kit of the Forge World apothecaries, where you get a Mark II guy and a Mark IV guy, and then
it's Mark III. Is he Mark II? I think he's Mark III. I've got one of them in my cabinet behind me.
He is a Mark II, according to the whenever I originally bought it, it was advertised as a Mark II guy and a Mark IV guy.
But we don't have a Mark VI apothecary,
which I scratch built out of plastic kits and some 3D. I got a 3D printed backpack so that he could have like a little searchlight on him and his Narthesium in his arm.
I was thinking of getting the 40k command squad. To take the apothecary parts from that kit, and then
the 40k command squad's a really good shout because you get a few different bits and pieces in there. You get cool shoulder pads for like a champion model.
You do,
which are like extra armor and like plates on it.
So all of these kits, by the way, peeps, is definitely a good time to grab them now. Like a lot of them are now direct sales from Games Workshop only. So likes of the Indominus Terminators, really get them. If you want those type of Terminators at 30k, get them now. It's like we talked about in episode 1. But things like the Command Squad and the Vanguard Veterans, especially for the close combat weapons, get those kits now if you want those type of weapons in your 30k armies, because once the new 40k Space Marine Codex comes out in September, and all of the new Primaris kits come out, which will be like Assault Marines and the new Terminators and the Assault Terminators and all that kind of stuff. A lot of these firstborn 40k kits are going to slowly be moving to direct sales from Games Workshop only, and then once they're into that, then they'll slowly start to disappear. It's already started to happen. I think you mentioned... Kyle, the box dreadnoughts have now been removed from the Games Workshop website. They are slowly going to do this, and for 30k players, there's a lot of really cool pieces that we can use in our armies, because obviously they're the right scale for the marks of armor that we use. Because the Primaris stuff is a little bit bigger arms wise.
Are the arms not easily just transferable and look fine?
I think they're a little bit thicker. They're like a little bit bulkier than normal power armor.
The shoulder pad fits between Trueborn and Primaris Marines.
They do, but the arms are their arms have got additional armor plating down the wrists and stuff, so they're a little bit
Oh,
thicker.
right, okay.
Like
Uh,
it's quite funny when you get a Primaris arm next to a Mark 6 arm. Like it's like, oh, this guy's been like definitely on the roids, and this guy isn't.
And actually, that's a good point. Is obviously people coming from 40K, most chapters, which would obviously fall into legions whenever you're talking about the originals. There's upgrade kits for Primaris Marines, which give you the molded shoulder pads, which are cheaper and just as good to use in your 30K army if you want to go that extra mile,
Yeah.
and it won't break the bank compared to the Forge World kits.
Also, your Primaris heads are exactly the same scale as your regular Firstborn and Horus Heresy heads. So if you buy those kits, like the Salamanders one, the Space Wolf one, just to
Yep.
use our two legions as an example,
I think the Raven
those
Guard have one as well.
who
Raven Guard.
Riven, they all pretty much have one.
Yeah.
But like those specific heads, they fit perfectly with the Horus Heresy tactical squad kits. They're perfectly fine. I'm going to be getting a couple of the Salamander ones because of the Salamander heads work perfectly for what I want to do. So yeah, you know, so they are very interchangeable. But like right now over these next couple of months is literally your window to get this stuff. So like once September hits, it's unless your local store is some lying down on a shelf somewhere, you're going to be hard pushed to get it. So definitely, I'm going to be picking up a couple of kits here and there just so I get access to some nice weaponry. Because there's a
the
really
Primaris kits will come with 10 shoulder pads in the meat, as opposed to some GW kits which might only have like 5 from Forge World.
they I don't know why, but they originally released the Primaris ones with only 5 guys.
Yeah.
But some of them have changed because, like, I know the Imperial Fist one, you get 2 frames in that box now.
Oh wow.
So you get, and basically each frame has 5 shoulder pads for Marines. Then it has 3 for the Aggressor Gravis armor, which we can't use in 30k because we don't use that armor and it's not compatible with Terminator plate.
The wrong size of pad and all that sort of stuff.
But the Power Fist works well with our kits. The heads work well. And I think a lot of them like that. I know the Salamander one has been doubled up now. I think
would the
Space Wolf
Aggressor shoulders work on Terminators?
No, they're too big.
Ah, right. Okay.
And that's the one thing that I've tried to get confirmed regarding the new Terminators is their shoulders roughly the same size of the current Terminators.
I would go with they're just completely scaled up based on the images we've seen.
Yeah, because I was looking at maybe doing a Death Watch army, and the Death Watch upgrade kit comes with Terminator shoulder pads. And I'm like, well, does that work with the new Terminators? But I don't know because I've not seen the new Terminators in the flesh. So that's an issue. But like in regards to parts and things, like now is your perfect opportunity, especially tanks and things like you may want to use. I know the Scorpius is essentially a Forge World kit or a plastic kit.
Plastic.
But you may want to use a Whirlwind. Now, I would have zero problems you running a Whirlwind as a Scorpius because it's pretty much the same thing. But you might come across one of those Puritans we've been talking about that would not like that at all.
I have to say that I've never encountered anybody who has actually got an official command rhino.
I had one in first edition.
Always just been like a satellite dish slapped on the back of it.
I had one of them in first edition.
Yeah, and I mean, the cost for that kit, for that upgrade kits that they have brought out for the command rhino is ridiculous.
Yeah, you glue the rhino door at the back.
There's so many easier ways for you to get things into your army, and certainly a point that I want to drive home is that you don't need to spend megabucks in order to get your army into play and to be happy with it.
That's true.
It's very much everybody pretty much, certainly from our own community, is on the same page that you build something because you want to use it and because it's cool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to come from an official source to upgrade it. It's like we know a fair amount of people. There's a fair amount of people that have like 3D printers, so they're more than happy to like 3D print parts. I think there's a limit to it, however, and to have like a fully 3D printed army is
I
it irks me, but we're never playing in
yeah.
a GDP official store or going
I
to war. Like
yeah.
I could, I could with the stuff that I have, but there's some people that's never going to be their thing, and it's
No,
only the local community.
and I am one of them. For me, for 3D printing stuff, I'm firmly in the camp that I don't agree with it in regards to full 3D printed kits. Now, a friend of mine printed me out some Crimson Paladins. They look identical to the Forge World ones. And when he handed me them, I didn't pay for them. And I had enough for 2 units. I didn't like them. They look good and it saved me a lot of money, but I felt uncomfortable having and using them because I'm very much a firm believer that regardless of Games Workshop's prices and Forge World's prices, we need to support the company in the games that we play, because if we don't and we do all decide to go down the 3D printed route and just print off our own stuff, that Horus Heresy will end up like Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where it isn't making Games Workshop money, and then they go, let's terminate it. So I understand that.
Yeah, people need to show interest.
Yes, because like in the back end of the and we seen this at our local gaming club as volunteers, people were turning up to play Fantasy Battle, and I remember one player who turned up with his undead army, and it was made up of entirely Mantic miniatures, and then he was one of the people that then raged that Games Workshop had the audacity to cancel the game he played because it wasn't making the money. And you're like, yeah, but dude, you're not buying any stuff from Games Workshop.
Yeah, it's like if you're not
why are you
if
angry?
you're not if you're not in, you can't complain.
I don't mind like parts, 3D printed parts for miniatures. Because
I have absolutely no problem.
Yeah, like if Games Workshop aren't going to produce the parts to fit the options that we have, then cool, let the 3D printing and sculpting community fill that niche. But for full kits, I don't like it.
For destroyers.
Yeah.
I did it with a bunch of bolt pistols because obviously getting hold of that many bolt pistols in Heresy is really difficult.
Yeah. But
so it's like those things to make the unit work.
Yeah.
And I think it's always I've always had a problem with GW's like kit design, because sometimes, especially whenever you said about Deathwatch. So I remember the original whenever the plastic Deathwatch first released, and you opened up the box and you get like a shield, and you get a few different like combat weapons and bolters galore and all different sorts of like ranged options. But whenever you got to the likes of those what were they called, frag cannons, I think they were called.
Yeah.
It was like frag cannons in a kill team squad you could have more than one in a squad, but they only ever provided one in the box.
Yeah, but
it's like that mentality I've never enjoyed, because then if you only want that one box, but you want to have the unit the way you want, you need to buy like 4 boxes.
Yeah, but from a business perspective, that's them wanting you to buy more boxes.
No, at the same time,
they used to do the same thing with the Devastators when you got basically 4 weapons or 5 weapons, and it was basically one of each. But you're never going to take all 4 weapon systems. You always wanted 4 las cannons, so you had to go out and buy 4 of this. But like that came off the back of the fact that we used to buy Devastators as in a blister pack, where it would come with 2 las cannons that were made out of metal and then 2 plastic marines, and then I think the box set. It's like they are getting a little bit better in regards to that, like especially for the 30k. where we
Oh,
have like
the special weapons
we
group.
literally just buy a box now and we get all the special weapons that we need for the guns, or we're like, all I want heavy bolters. Well, there's a box of 10 heavy bolters, and I get some missile launchers with it too. Amazing. So we're kind of spoilt for choice now for the regards of that we can buy our upgrades. It sometimes can feel like a little bit of a kick in the nuts when you look at things like the Leviathan, where you've got a Leviathan close combat, Leviathan shooty, but if you want that additional weapon, you to have like the Mortis style Leviathan, you then have to go and buy like a separate gun kit to basically get that. And it's like, okay, but why can't you just put that in the shooty one? Why can't the shooty one come with multiple different gun arms, gun
Yeah.
options, and the
Very
close combat one come with just fists? And then you can buy two of them and then magnetize it and switch the arms in and out. But obviously they're a business; they need to make money.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and we're taking it from the passionate and hobby side of things, and as
yeah,
a business, they're looking at it from a different perspective,
yeah.
of course.
They're in.
I mean, I understand, especially with the Leviathan, because I just went out and bought a combat kit Leviathan
Yeah,
to go alongside my Forge World Leviathan, and I wanted two of the weapon kits, and then I was going to be magnetizing the lot so that the weapons could be transferred between both of them, so I could kit them out how I wanted, really.
yeah.
But it was just that little bit of kick in the teeth, trying getting first off finding the individual weapon kits, because GW don't make that easy. Uh, and
Actually,
then it ends up being, oh, you get one of each of the guns, but that's it.
oh
So
wow,
you don't.
I didn't realize this is a thing now. So I've just checked. They don't sell the close combat Leviathan anymore.
No.
No, they literally sell. Oh no, there it is. Yes, they do. Yes, sorry. Yes, they do. So yeah, you pay £50 for a plastic Leviathan, either with close combat weapons, or you buy it with the ranged weapons. And by the looks of that, you only get.
One of each gun.
Does it say that? You get two guns at least.
Yes, yes. Both arms can be equipped with a
Um,
gun, but you get one storm cannon, one melta cannon, one Garav cannon. I think that's all the options they have for range.
uh, Grav, Melter, and the Storm Cannon, yeah. So you get one of each of the guns.
Yeah.
And
Where
then
whenever you're wanting to do a gunslinger Leviathan, you want two
yeah,
guns.
and then
Of
the close
the
combat
two of them.
weapon, the close combat weapons, you either get I think it's one Siege Claw and one Murder Claw. Yeah, it seems to
Yeah.
be, yeah, it is, because you get an extra. It's only, yeah, you do. So you then have to buy. You can then buy an additional frame, which basically gives you your Murder Claw or your Siege Claw.
Yeah.
So
So there's your
there's
second stuff.
there's your second version of that. Or you then have two. Then you have a ranged weapon sprue, which is essentially the extra storm cannon, melter, or Garav. And
Yeah.
these are not cheap. You have to buy these direct from GW as well, and they're like £17 each.
Yeah.
Now,
Your,
for
your local
me,
your local hobby store might be able to order them in for you instead of having to
yeah,
go and do it yourself,
yeah.
but it's not going to be any cheaper because
What's
third
what's
party stores
what's
don't get the discount
yeah,
that they get for things that aren't direct order.
yeah. What's irritating about that is the fact that these weapons are on one sprue, so
Yeah,
there's no logical reason why Games Workshop can't just add those additional sprues into each of those Leviathan kits.
yeah, because it's the white boxes because it's direct order
Unless,
only.
unless, unless, and I haven't bought the Leviathan yet, unless only those. I think a normal Leviathan only comes with 3 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4. So unless only 4 boxes, only 4 frames can fit in that box. And
So the Leviathan box is a pretty chunky box because obviously the Leviathan's a pretty pretty chunky model whenever you build it up. But the close combat one comes with
4 frames.
with 2 frames with the combat arms, because you get enough parts in each of those frames to build 1 fist, and then you have to choose whether it's going to be a snippy claw or a drill.
Yeah.
So the combat dread comes with 2 of those, whereas if you get a shooty dread, you get 1 combat arm and 1 gun arm. Now, obviously, they can be magnetized and changed up and swapped out, so you could take 2 of different guns on them.
Yeah.
But that's not what you ever want to go for.
No.
I mean, whenever I've seen,
but it's the same with the Contemptor. It's the same with the Contemptor as well. Like the normal Contemptor kit, you don't get all the weapons.
Yeah, and I mean the Predator I think is a little bit easier because it's split it into 2 different kits, because you have like a Predator battle tank kit and then you have a support tank, which comes with different stuff.
Yeah.
I think like the support one comes with like the conversion beamer and stuff like that.
Yeah,
whereas
for Salamanders, like for me, the support tank is the main one to get because it comes with the melter turret. But the
100%, the support tank is the better kit to go for whenever you go between those 2 kits.
But
but obviously
the size
depending
Onsens is just a generic sprue, so that's fine.
Yeah.
I like how they've done it, like the Land Raider sprue. Like for the las cannons is basically either for the normal Land Raider or it's for the Spartan. Just depends how you build it. So yeah, that doesn't bother me. I just think that when it comes to the dreadnoughts, and I've got and I'll have to buy one, but I've got a horrible distinct.
Just aren't available.
Yeah, but I think the reason why they don't do it, and this is not to defend their clear gouging here, because if it isn't, and I'm sure when I see the kit and open the box, it'll either prove my theory right or wrong. I've got a distinct feeling that the reason why you don't get that additional frame for those additional weapons is because of the box size. I've got a distinct, because we were talking about this last night with the fact that Games Workshop released gaming mats, and the reason why a lot of the mat size for the games for 40k and Age of Sigmar shrunk in size. 30k still plays on a 6x4, but 40k which is the best size. But 40k and Age of Sigmar play on a reduced size. I think it's 44 wide by 60 inches long. And the reason for that is when you fold that mat up, it fitted in to a certain size box that was the same size as the gaming boards that they release for Warcry and Kill Team. So it's clearly they did it for that reason. So I would, when I get a Leviathan, I'll report back. But I'm pretty sure that when I open that box, there won't be enough room for a 5th sprue, and that thickness. Because all of their boxes are designed to fit on their shelves.
Well, what I don't get is, okay, so my point that I'm trying to make is that you have an option between getting a combat dread, which is purely designed for combat, which is perfect.
Yeah.
It is designed and kitted out the way you want to build that kit.
Yeah.
Whereas the ranged one gives you a close combat weapon instead of just doing the.
It's because they're on different sprues. Because they're on different sprues. Like all of those ranged weapons are on one sprue. All the close combat stuff is on 2 sprues. So they can't.
Yeah, but the close combat's on 2 sprues because you get 2 close combat arms.
No. Looking at the frames, literally looking at the pictures now, you've got the main body with all of the legs and all of that part. Then you have the frame for the main body, the chassis. Then you have literally a frame which has all of the shoulder parts and the shoulder joints and the shoulder pauldrons, and then some of the frontal armor parts for the main torso. Then you have literally one frame that has the parts for the actual fist itself. So for the shooty one, you don't get that. Let me just check because I'm pretty sure you don't get that that extra sprue with the guns, because the guns itself for the storm cannon,
No,
the
they're
grav,
they're
and the
they're
melter
all
is on a completely different frame. So whether you get that one, and that one, which is what makes you dreadnought, and then yeah. So what they've done is they've taken out the fisty part, the parts that build the fist. So basically, from the elbow down is on one frame, and they've taken that close combat part out and put in the gun frame, which only has 3 weapons on it.
yeah.
So like to have like a proper one gun, one fist is basically an additional sprue, or to have 2 of the same shooty weapon is an additional sprue, and that's why I keep thinking that it's more probably down to the thickness of the box and their
Eh,
restrictions is why they probably can't fit that 5th frame into the box. I'll know once I buy one and open it up, and it'll be like, yeah, you're not getting an
yeah, I
extra
mean,
frame in there.
you
Um,
could very well be eating your words in a couple of weeks.
or yeah, or you'll open it up and
Yeah,
show me. But I've got a distinct feeling that that's the reason why they do it. That's probably why it's just an additional way for them to make a little bit of money rather than just make the boxes bigger. But all of the boxes that they do, and I know this because I've spoke to them about it, that all of their boxes are set sizes, and it's done specifically to fit onto their shelves in the stores.
yeah,
So that's why when you buy like the big night boxes, they're the same size as the big Age of Sigmar kits. It's all designed to fit into the same packaging.
yeah.
I know that's what they do, so I'd imagine that's probably the reason why they do what they do with the Leviathans. It sucks for us, but I think it's more a convenient thing for them, and then they make a little bit extra money by selling the sprue separately. But you know, it is what it is. How long have we been going on? Wow, plenty of time. Right, so we're gonna wrap up here because we're well and truly off tangent now. Um, and we will go now. I will say, if anyone is still listening, if you have any questions regarding the Horus Heresy that you want to ask, leave it in the comment section below. And what we'll do is, if we start getting them, then we'll have a period of the podcast where we will answer your questions. Obviously,
Yeah, but a
heresy
question at
related.
a time, always
Yeah,
good.
heresy related would be good. And yeah, so, and even if you've got any suggestions, feedback, or any topics that you would like us to cover, I just will say that we will not write articles. For the person who left that comment, we don't do written articles. It's either YouTube videos or podcasts.
If you catch me on a good day, sometimes I can talk many hours of shit at you on a private message, but that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, we're not writing articles. Like, I'm dyslexic, so it's not happening, and I don't have time because I do all of the video side of things. So it's that's definitely not. But if you have anything else, any burning issues, or any topics that you want to discuss or ask about, then feel free to leave a comment. And obviously subscribe, ring the bell, and all of that good stuff, because you're definitely doing it, because I'm loving the algorithm right now and the analytics in the background. So it's all good. And yeah, we will call it here. Any closing words for yourself, Carl?
Just remember, everybody, it's your hobby. What we've talked about is not about the gaming side, really. It is more about the modeling and the truest part of the hobby, and just do what you want that you're happy with. Everybody's here to enjoy the game in whatever fashion it is, whether you're just collecting, whether you're gaming with it, or whether you want to make it as sci-fi historically accurate as you want it to be. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing, and the community is only stronger by sharing what they do.
Yeah, it really is. So yes, but right, we're going to call it. I'm hungry.
Yeah, it's late in the day.
It is. It's late in the day, and it's all good. So thank you very much for everybody listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.